Anyone who's watched me over the years knows that I'm obsessed with Hydrolyte. In my opinion, the best oral rehydration product on the market. I literally use it every day. My family uses it. When I had COVID, I'm telling you, Hydrolyte contributed to my recovery, kept me hydrated. Now, with things finally reopening back around the country, the potential exposure to the common cold is always around. And like always, Hydrolyte has got your back. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity, my new favorite, starts with their fast-absorbing electrolytes and adds a host of great ingredients. Plus, each single serving easy pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C, 300 milligrams of elderberry extract. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy to pour sticks that rapidly dissolve in water, make a great tasting drink, has 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. Uses all natural flavors, gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, non-GMO, and even vegan. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity is also now available in ready-to-drink bottles at the Walmart next to the pharmacy. Or as always, you can find it by visiting hydrolyte.com/Dr. Drew. Again, that is HYDRALYTE.com/DRDREW. Be sure to use the code Dr. Drew 25 for a special discount.
Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew as he sniffles his way.
Yes, here it is indeed. Shall I be over here? Yes, I shall.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, you guys. Thank you for joining us. We're having something, a gathering, a Zoom meeting we haven't had in quite some time, and it's
Look at the guy on the train.
nice to see all you guys. Look at that. Who is that?
George Clark.
George Clark on the New Jersey Transit. Is that where you are?
No, I'm on the M23 crosstown on the way
Bus on the M22 going up the like Fifth Avenue or something, right?
Not 23rd Street.
Fantastic.
Does it feel safe?
Yeah. It's once you get more towards Hell's Kitchen, it gets a little bit more dicey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Well, guys, good to see everybody. Where shall we start this conversation? I guess, Joe, you were telling me something just before the mic's heated up. Why don't we get that out there?
Hello, Dr. Drew. Hello, Susan. Hope you're having a great day.
Thanks,
so
Joe.
What we were talking about was I decided to rewatch your episode with Steve Kirsch and talking about Fluvoxamine.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was watching the episode where Steve Kirsch insisted that you take Fluvoxamine, even though he's not a doctor, but I guess that's the perks of someone who is very wealthy, could just do that, and there was a comment on YouTube that talked about how the video that your episode with Kirsch helped her family member a lot because she ended up getting Fluvoxamine for her family member, and within 24 hours, the symptoms, the brain fog and those symptoms started going away. Now, if you're okay with this, and again, this is not a sponsor of yours, but I've been promoting on your airwaves, speakwithanmd.com.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get Fluvoxamine.
I'm hearing sporadic stories of physicians being stonewalled at the pharmacy, which is extraordinary. As you know, Fluvoxamine, in that episode, you saw Steve was convincing me, telling me I shouldn't mess with my brain. He wanted to stop that inflammation immediately. And I was getting better at that time, but I sort of stalled out, and that's when I got on the Fluvoxamine, and it really, really, truly helped me a lot. So I am an advocate. Now...
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you think there's enough data on, and of course, I highly recommend everyone to watch the 60 Minutes piece on Fluvoxamine that aired, I want to say it aired 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Kirsch was on there, and he talked about Golden Gate Fields. And I've had a number of conversations since with Steve Kirsch about Fluvoxamine.
Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you, it seems like the data is pretty overwhelming that if you take that early, the chances of you becoming a long hauler are very, very small.
Yes. In fact, there is not just, and again, Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson have some data on this as well. It's not just the Fluvoxamine, it's Fluvoxamine plus Ivermectin. There's a lot of good data on that too. So there's actually a movement afoot. A lot of people are having reactions from the vaccines, particularly the mRNA vaccines, that are really the equivalent of like a mini COVID. And there's some evidence that taking Fluvoxamine and Ivermectin might prevent that. And there's sort of no reason, certainly no reason not to take fluvoxamine that I've seen or am aware of, and I've been using that medicine for literally decades. I took it myself. So it's kind of an interesting thing Steve's getting into now, where he's trying to advocate, and he's got some data on this too, to show that it really reduces the vaccine side effects. And they're stonewalled all over the place. It really is.
I also think it's interesting where Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson are going too.
In what sense?
In what sense is now that they're seeing more and more COVID long hauler vaccine patients.
Right. And that is the idea that Steve is going at, trying to prevent that from happening. I am of the opinion that there's something about this spike protein that is unique and different and wild and sort of, as Dr. Sapphire said the other day, tricky. I thought that was a great word to describe what's going on here. And that if you're producing spike protein, you're sort of getting some of the mini COVID stuff, or at least some version of what goes wrong with COVID. And that's fine, because that's what you want. You want those spike proteins to generate the immune response. But we may have ways to really reduce. I've seen some nasty vaccine reactions, and we may have ways to really reduce that. So I'm with Steve on this. He's out there, beating the bushes the way he always does. And I don't know if he's working with Dr. Yo and Dr. Patterson at all. I'm going to get Yo back on here. I haven't talked to him in several weeks, so I don't know where they're at. Do you guys know?
But I'm talking about with Kirsch. I know he was in he was on a Zoom chat last week with Pierre Corey, and he talked very, very highly about the COVID long haulers group. And let me bring it up, Dr. Drew and Susan, COVIDlonghaulers.com.
Yeah.
I know you've been beating the bush around it, and both Corey and Kirsch talked about how they are the premier group to treat and research long haulers.
Yeah, and they have found, I don't know if they've published all this yet, but they have some interesting data about the viral replication continuing and sort of hiding from the immune system in monocytes, particularly in the central nervous system. So it's very, very interesting stuff they're getting into. Also, I saw somebody up here on the restream mentioning the Curse of Akakor, which is Bobby Chacon's thing we talked about last week. We watched it last night. It's very good. It really is very good. Right, Susan? You liked it? She's busy. So do support Bobby Chacon. It's on Discovery. It was on last night, and just set your DVRs and that kind of stuff. All right. The other thing. Oh, you have the little tape? Do you want to play it? Okay, she might play the tape here. Diane, you were talking about Juicy Scoop and about the Juicy Scoop episode I did with Heather McDonald.
Yes.
And you thought that was a good conversation. What did you like most about that?
Even though I probably shouldn't be in the age group that still watches Teen Mom, I am a fan. So
I see. Okay.
I like that part.
Yeah.
And what else? I'm trying to think. I'm so tired from the drive. You
got up at 3 a.m. you told me.
Yes, I did, to drive down to Oregon.
Yeah.
Alana, what else? You guys talked about that? You talked about the funniest time, or the times that you and Heather have ripped it together, and what you thought was funniest.
All right, so Susan was there for
part.
that. So I guess they have a segment, Susan, they call Heather Ripped It, and I brought up the Stumble Down the Beach episode where they all fell into the sea turtle. Do you remember that? And then they walked into somebody else's house and they were screaming at us to come with them. And we were like, hell no, you guys are out of your minds. Do you remember? I think Susan remembers that, but she's busy.
Was that when you guys were in Mexico?
We were in Mexico. That's exactly right. Okay. And as it pertains to Mexico, I was thinking about that. I would have lost my mind without that trip. When I was lying sick, the one thing I kept thinking was, like, thank God I did something when I was feeling better. Number one. And number two, my illness had nothing to do with Mexico. And because I'd gone to Mexico 2 months before, everyone wanted to make that the reason I got COVID. And it made me start to think about masks. And I wear masks absolutely the way you're supposed to. And I still got COVID. And if you notice, I am not saying that masks don't work. I'm not saying people shouldn't wear masks. What I'm saying is, is that isn't it interesting that when really significant interventions come to bear, things that have 90% efficacy, that's where you see this pandemic just completely collapse. But it's sort of clear that distancing and masks sort of has effect on the fringe. How much? 10%, 15%? We just don't know. But when you look at the graphs, although, Joe, you still think that a large part of that is the seasonal variation or just the life cycle of the virus, right? Joe, you there?
I'm here,
Oh.
and I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of getting ready for work. However,
Okay.
where I agree is that seasonality is showing that shows that the next wave will be in the South and the Sun Belt, which will start somewhere around the middle of June, and go through July, because it becomes so hot in those areas where temperatures. I mean, the high temperature in Phoenix today is 102.
So people end up inside.
They end up inside
Yeah.
because, once the temperature becomes, gets over 110, it becomes a little bit unbearable.
Yeah. You're stuck in. It's like the same as 10 degrees below zero on the other end of the spectrum.
Right, exactly. So the question comes down to how much of an increase are we going to see? Two dynamics. One, the dynamic of, are there enough people vaccinated yet for full effect? And two, how much of the population has been exposed to COVID already?
Right.
Through natural immunity.
It's a really interesting question.
One of the answers is we're going to find out during the 4th of July, during the 4th of July weekend and higher. Of course, what's going to happen is that the panic porners of the world are going to say, oh, look, Florida's increasing, Texas is increasing.
Right.
Of course. And then they're going to say, oh, look, the Northeast and the northern parts of the country.
Are we going to be like that again, do you think? Or have we gotten over some of that nonsense?
No, I still think we're going to go through that, because what's going to happen is they're going to say, well, look, the vaccine works. Look, New York's under 1% positivity, even though, with 75% of the state vaccinated at say July or mid-July. By the way, one other note, the county that I live in, which is Nassau County, New York, is the highest percentage of first vaccination in New York State.
That's interesting. I heard that New York City was at some sort of risk of closing down again. Is that true? No. Okay, good.
No. Hopefully you're not. Definitely not. And if anything, New York City is on the verge of 100% reopening. That's
what I thought. That when I was there last week, and that's sort of the direction I saw it going. But then I read something on Twitter where I can't rely on anything these days. It's just I don't know where to find it. I do not know where to. The amount of fake news out there is insane. It is insane.
As of course it's funny, I'm getting ready for work, and at the same time I'm looking up stuff. Today in New York State, because this was a major story, the positivity rate in New York State dropped down to 0.59%. So, and hospitalizations are below 1,200. The state with the highest hospitalizations in the nation right now is Florida, and they're at 2,000.
I think we're doing awfully well. I mean, it's still around, but it's certainly not at pandemic proportion. So,
at what point do you think
they call it?
There's a good prediction question.
When do they call it?
Do you think the pandemic would be officially over? Meaning, of course, by definition.
Right. It's officially over when the excess death rate drops down to normal. That's definition-wise. But in terms of somebody calling it, I don't know. We have Walensky saying she's feeling impending doom. I feel something terrible is coming. So she's not going to call it. And Dr. Fauci is, I want to say something about Dr. Fauci. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but 3 days ago, I think some of us have talked about this, but 3 days ago, he went out and was in front of Congress and said, we're going to look into whether or not that virus came out of a lab. I mean, that was such a massive shift in his opinion and his willingness to have discourse about, frankly, sort of epidemiology and scientific kind of endeavors. it opened the doors to everybody having conversations about everything, almost. I mean, it just feels like that we'll all look back at that moment and go, oh my gosh, that was the moment we could all start to talk to each other again. Because
I think it really started with Nicholas Wade.
Well, I think it built from him. I agree with you. That was a part of what got Fauci to the point where he said that. But in terms of the loosening of the discourse, where people could talk about science again. I mean, the fact that I could talk about fluvoxamine and ivermectin today, that's a sign. I couldn't. 3 weeks ago, this would be taken off YouTube immediately, just bringing those things up. Or bringing up the idea of a virus from a lab off YouTube immediately. And so people can begin to have conversations again about all kinds of things. That's actually why I called Steve. I just thought, I wonder how he was experiencing this. And he agreed that things are different now. It is interesting.
Hey, Doctor,
yes,
can I
ma'am.
mention 2 more things about your juicy scoop?
Okay, one more thing really quick.
Just
really
okay,
quick. Tamara on Facebook is asking, what medication did I take to help with my post-COVID? Daughter still suffering brain fog from having COVID in November. Tamara, I took fluvoxamine. You could go to covidlonghaulers.com and look up some more ideas there, because they're using ivermectin with fluvoxamine in some cases. Doesn't work for everybody, but it worked markedly for me. The other thing for my fog is I started learning a new language. I mean, get Babbel or something and start learning a new language. She may be surprised how much that helps with the fog. I was shocked because my stamina was terrible, and I had just, horrible aches and pains and the kind of sleep problems and all this. And fluvoxamine took care of that, but I still had a little fogginess. And then I started working on a language for this trip we have coming up. It cleared up. My fog just cleared up. It was bizarre. Okay, so what's up?
Oh, so
Thank
I
you.
just remembered 2 more things,
All
and
right.
then I'll be quiet.
All
Then I
right.
won't say anything more.
All right.
Is that I thought your conversation about homelessness was really good. And then where she talked about your and Adam's relationship, because I listened to your guys' podcast as well on the way down today.
Right.
And so I thought those were both good conversations too. The whole thing was really good, but those were the other 2.
She's a good interviewer. She's interested in things that a lot of people are interested in. Do you, now that you've listened to the Adam and Drew podcast, do you have any questions about our relationship? Most people do.
I don't know. I really like Adam.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. So, but I think I don't know. I mean, he seems like he says what's on his mind, like right then.
Yes.
And you seem to think before you talk a little bit more, like a little more thoughtful, maybe.
He has.
I think he's great. I listen to
Yeah.
his
So
podcast.
I'll tell you what you're hearing.
Don't worry, he's a psychopath.
What you're hearing
Don't
is
say that.
he has interesting constructs in his mind. So things pop into his head that are sort of different than you or I would have. And he will go with those and see where they take him. So he trusts his instincts on, you'll hear him saying sometimes, well, here's what this just popped into my mind, or this image I just had, or I had this thought. And he knows that that's the beginning of a something, and he just starts going down that path. I have instincts like that a little bit, but they're usually poorly formed, and I'm not quite sure where I'm going. And I have learned to pay attention before I speak. I mean, to really have something to say when I start talking, especially around him, because he'll attack me if I'm not making sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so my thoughtfulness is really more sort of a habit of trying to make sure I tell this to public speakers too. If somebody's out there publicly speaking, is make sure you have something to say, make sure you want to say, and then think about it and then go say it. But if you go too much shooting from the hip, you can find yourself in a corner, and then it gets weird, and then it's hard to kind of dig out of that. So.
But I don't mean I love listening to him. I think his brain. I agree.
He
with
has a
Mark
crystal
the way-
brain.
He's a
Yeah, he's
genius.
amazing.
He's
Yeah,
a
he's a
Yeah,
crystal brain. That's why I
so
keep bugging him
fun
about
to
stuff.
listen to. Yeah,
So-
he's really smart.
He's a
So I enjoy
self-made
your
genius.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah,
it's
he really
a
is.
certain kind of thing he's got, right?
It's like
Yeah.
an Aspergian.
Well, there's some research out there that shows that starts to look at human minds as pattern-seeking minds and sort of relation-seeking minds, and the ideal is a mix of both. But if you're all one way or all the other, you have insights that other people don't have. And he and I are kind of like I'm more, relationship seeing, and he's way more pattern seeing. And so that's what makes us interesting together. You know, he has interesting insights. I have constructs that he may not see. So for him, some of the human emotive experience or interpersonal experience is mysterious.
You know what's crazy is that Drew talks to Adam every day for like an hour.
Oh, do you really?
Like two giddy little 13-year-olds.
Oh, it's so cute. Yeah, I think Adam's great. I like him.
Right?
Thank you.
You're on the phone talking for an hour. Like,
Well, he's had some, to be fair, that all picked up because of some stuff that's going on in
He
his
still
life.
calls you every day, though.
I know he's still sorting through stuff. So, you know.
Sorry, I'm eating M&M.
And also the world has been very challenging, and we sit and kind of trying to hammer it out and figure out what's going on every day. And I'm interested in his thoughts. He's interested in my thoughts. And so we try to figure things out. Kristen, how are things
I'm going
up?
to change cameras so you can see the restream.
Yeah, I can't see anybody. Kristen, how are things up north? In the
They suck. It's 44 degrees outside. It was 88
sounds kind of
degrees
nice.
2 days ago. And it's raining.
Hold on.
But my terrible neighbors are moving in the rain, so
Yeah, what happened there?
oy vey.
Yeah.
It was just the kind of people that really tell your kids to be quiet a lot when they're playing, and if you accidentally kick a ball, we have very small yards. If you kick a ball, you kids are never getting it back. And I've offered to help a bunch of times because it's been raining, and they just keep saying we're really busy. I'm like, all right, so you don't want my help, but that's fine.
Well, you look lovely and dressed up today. Is that just for the Zoom, or are you going out and doing something?
I'm not going anywhere. I had a meeting this morning, so I had to put a face on. It was my first time in, I think, over a month. So I didn't scare anybody with the paleness. I didn't look like I was out of some Ring movie. But I would love I have a question. I would love
Yes,
your
ma'am.
feedback.
Please.
So, as many of us know, there's been another tragic mass shooting.
Yeah.
And people are talking about background checks.
Yeah.
And when it comes to mental health, a lot of the details pertaining to people with their mental health is protected by HIPAA.
Right.
So when they're talking about extensive background checks, at what point are we able, or people who are trying to regulate arms sales, able to have access to any kind of mental health reports or history when all of that's protected by HIPAA law?
Yeah, I don't know. All you have to do is have people waive HIPAA. And I don't know if all states do that or not. But you can waive your...
Really accurate, by the way.
What's that, Tom?
Oh, it was a question. So
Say it again. Well, Tom.
not be accurate.
That's all right. Tom, go ahead.
No, I was just saying the background checks, they actually do really extensive background checks.
Don't they make you waive your HIPAA
check.
privilege in most states?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually just waive it. But I think mostly they ask you what's going on. They don't really, do they necessarily seek out hospital records?
Yeah, like let's say if I've been declared mentally insufficient, or even if I let's say I went crazy one night, punched my wife, it's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
I cannot buy a gun.
What state is that?
Florida.
Okay.
Pretty strict here, believe it or not.
And I
can't
think
have a DUI either.
it depends on the state, right? So Kristen, to your point, let's get Kristen back in here. Kristen.
Well, the reason I ask is because, let's say, for example, and obviously I'm in a different state, a cold one. And as far as background checks go here, like I know some people who have plenty of firearms, but I know for a fact that they've also been dealing with different kinds of mental health issues. So there's that conflict. At what point, is the line drawn,
right,
where you decide you have, or somebody,
right,
from a legal perspective can say, or a law perspective can say, you have too many issues or mental health flags that you are allowed to have a firearm.
So here's the problem. Here's the problem. Now I don't have all the data at my disposal, but so I'm going to give you my sort of sense on this. Remember the kid that shot up the Denver theater that said he was the Joker? Okay, that was acute. That was decompensated schizophrenia. That rarely happens. Which is good news. that people with those illnesses can get themselves into trouble, particularly bipolar disorder, but it doesn't typically happen. What typically happens is much more when it's a mass event, particularly not just somebody injuring somebody in their own family, but a sort of a mass event. It is typically not somebody with what are called axis 1 psychiatric diagnoses. So it's not schizophrenia, bipolar depression. It is axis 2 psychopathy, narcissism, that sort of stuff, where these patients, these people, develop long-standing, severe, seething resentments and are generally not exactly socially easy to accommodate and get along with, and they end up sort of losing all their social connections. Or, I mean, that's some of the ones you start hearing about. The other group you'll hear about is the ones that, you know, like kill their family and light their house on fire, which are psychopaths. Those are psychopaths, straight up. And so psychopathy, narcissism, those are harder things. Those things don't end up in the hospital, right? Those end up in the courts because they do horrible things sometimes, but even not necessarily, right? They sometimes ends up as captains of industry, and it's hard to pull out who has these disorders.
That's true. I mean, just in my own personal experience, I'm certainly not anti-Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, you know, if it's written down and it's a right, I understand. But it's just, even knowing my own like personal history and my own health and mental health history, that just, you know, and I have no issue saying it, you know, having a history of depression in my family, it's my choice and my spouse's choice not to have guns in our house. But it's just always, it's just that gray matter in between. I guess no matter what, you know, people have the right to privacy, but they also have the right to the Second Amendment. And it's just scary. My kids had their first active shooter drill in school the other day.
That's why it's on your mind.
That was a challenging one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm glad they had it. I'm used to fire drills and tornado drills, but this was the first time there was an active shooter drill. They gave it a different name. I can't recall it off the top of my head. But,
they made it sound like less.
Yeah, not scary. It was like they assigned it a color, like in a hospital, like if somebody's code blue or what have you. But
that's good.
It just had me thinking a lot. And anyway, but other than that, it's cold. My kids are done with school in 4 days. I don't know what I'm going to do with them the next couple months, but just show them a good time. We can finally go out and have fun and visit people.
Right.
Is Wisconsin lightening up?
Yeah, we're great here.
Yeah.
Aside from just the crappy weather, everything is wonderful. Baseball is starting to open up. Basketball is starting to open up. Kids intramural sports starting to open up.
All right, that's good.
Really nice. I'm just happy to just show the kids the time of their life this summer.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a couple pieces of research that just came out while we're talking here. And one was something called The Pitfalls and Promise of Using Repurposed Drugs for COVID-19, talking about the international effort to get some data together on ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and fluvoxamine and things like that. And again, just do the research, guys. They're being very critical of the process and pointing out that people aren't reading the data very carefully because the studies have been terrible. So let's get that going. Let's keep it going. That's good that we're doing that. Also, I'm reading some data on physicians. This is the thing that jumped out at me from COVID, was how many of my peers were scared to death for fear of getting fired, meaning they worked for somebody else. And here now is some new data that showed 42% of physicians ages 55 and older employed by someone else, 51% age 40 to 54, and 70% under the age of 40. So physicians are now worker bees. They're not independent operators. They are in systems, and they are an incumbent on those systems, which is why people froze in place during COVID. It's exactly what I thought I was seeing. And it's interesting. I was talking to a radiation therapist who was my age, and we were talking about the days of the AIDS epidemic when we were dealing with, thousands of patients that had a 100% fatality associated with it. And we were uncertain about how the disease was transmitted. We were not sure if we were all at risk, really. We kept doing our work, but we weren't sure that this thing wouldn't be transmitted to medical caretakers. 100% fatality, not 1% fatality, 100% fatality. And he said something interesting. He goes, these younger faculty and residents have never seen serious outbreaks like we lived through early in our training and careers. And it freaked them out. This flu freaked them out. And there was a distinct difference between physicians who had been practicing independently their entire life and started their career working in a disease with 100% fatality, a pandemic, and going through another pandemic with H1N1 versus people that have come into their careers in the last 10 or 15 years and had no experience with any of this stuff, which was, again, another interesting insight into why there was such a different perception of what was going on with this outbreak. Anybody else have anything going on with them? Any other ideas or things you want to talk about? Yeah, Charles.
Two things.
Yeah.
One, I just watched an interview with Dr. Bean and Dr. Hector Carballo.
Mm-hmm.
And in Argentina, they're having a third wave. Their first two waves were actually not big. The wave they're having now is very big. Hector Carballo has done a lot of research on ivermectin, and what he has found with this current wave, which is involving the variants from England, the variants from India, the variants from
Brazil,
is that he's had to triple the dose of the ivermectin.
Oh boy.
He's been a big promoter of ivermectin, and he's increased the dose in a 70 kilogram person from 12 milligrams on days 1, 3, and 5 to 36 milligrams on days 1, 3, and 5.
Mm.
And his regimen is fairly simple. He just gives the ivermectin and aspirin. So that's one thing. The other thing, as I also watched an interview with Freddie Sayers. Freddie Sayers does Unheard TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good journalist. He gets some good guests. He got Nicholas Wade on about a week ago. It was a very good interview. You can find it on YouTube. You can also find it on Unheard TV. I did a little bit of research, and I found Nicholas Wade does have a website.
Mm-hmm.
And on his website, which I can paste here in the thing, you can go and you can find his email. And I think the interview with Freddie Sayers was very good, but he is not a doctor, and you are.
Freddie is the British guy?
What's the website?
He's the British. They're both
Yeah.
Brits.
Right.
They're both Brits.
Is Nicholas Wade, is it nicholaswade.com?
It's
And for those of you who aren't clear, we're talking about the guy that wrote the Medium article called Origin of COVID.
nicholaswade.medium.com.
Nicholas Wade.
I just put it in the chat thingy.
Got it.
And on that site is his email. And I think if it's up to you what you do, obviously, but if it would be a great guest on the show because I think you could ask questions in a different light.
I'm certain. He just passed. I just set somebody on it. Let me make sure that's who passed. Well, I may have thrown the email away, but let me see here.
He just passed. What do you mean?
I have somebody that books Dr. Drew podcast, not this streaming show that Susan does, and I sent him an email and told him to get him right now, and
Did he get him?
I think he passed. Yeah, you want to try, Susan? Yeah, you want to try?
Oh,
He said he's too busy.
Oh, okay.
You want to try to get him?
I just sent it to Michelle.
Okay, maybe she'll be more persuasive. All right, so we're gonna try again. We'll try for this show.
No,
Excellent.
because he wrote a good paper.
You could do
Yeah.
like a locals. We could even talk to him on locals.
He gave a very good interview.
Yeah, I imagine. He seemed like a very bright guy. I'm surprised that he is
He's very
British.
thorough,
Yeah.
very cool, calm, collected, objective. But having said all that, after watching the interview, you want the short answer from me?
Sure.
Came from the lab.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what I got. I have to tell you, instinctively, I was always shaking my head like, why aren't we sure seems like, well, I had two instincts. One was, it's sure bizarre that we're not thinking about a lab, that since there's a major virology lab there, we're not even zero contemplation of that. Number one, even if it went to the bat, could it have come from the lab? No, we can't talk about it, number one. And then number two, something I've not seen anybody else talk about, which was the thing that was most troubling for me, I've mentioned this before, in the early days of the outbreak, was the way the Chinese government behaved. Did you remember the tankers rolling down the street with chlorine being spread all over? That was insane.
They built a 500-bed hospital in 10 days.
Yep. But the whole thing, but that was already well into it. At the beginning, when they were bricking people into their apartments and shutting the streets down and air raid drills and tankers rolling down the street, just that image of tankers rolling down the street, I just kept thinking, what is this? This is not, there's no medical textbook directing.
Germ warfare, Drew.
Well, I had two thoughts.
That's what I thought.
I had two thoughts. One was,
that's how I think.
One was, they're trying to hide something, because this isn't something the doctors would recommend. They're doing something excessive to try to compensate for something, or this is something they had pre-arranged, like a rehearsal, should anything get out of that lab. Like where do those tankers come from? Boom, they're rolling down the streets as soon as it looks like there's a problem. I mean, and by the way, zero utility with a respiratory virus. Zero. They were just behaving in a manner as though you would when a virus gets out of a lab that might have an influenza-like sort of pandemic, which surfaces make a big deal. But in these respiratory viruses, begs no issue. It's just interesting. And back to the Medium article, or back to Nicholas Wade, he just presents the facts, right?
He's very analytical.
Yeah.
We could use a lot more journalists like him.
Oh my God. When I read the article, I thought, oh my God, there are journalists that do journalism. I literally had a huge reaction to it. It was like, I didn't know they will do this anymore, because none of them seem to do it.
The interview with Freddie Sayers was, just outstanding. But here again, Freddie Sayers is an outstanding journalist. He's very patient. He lets his guests speak, but he's not a doctor, and you are.
Yeah. No. I often get a little frustrated when I like the Unheard videos, but I get a little frustrated because there's a line of thought that I would have gone down with many of his guests that he just doesn't know to go down. But I would love to talk to this guy. So Susan will get to work on that. His article is just brilliant, I thought.
Well, Gary already tried, so.
No, try it again. Just try it again, Susan, please.
When did he try?
This afternoon. But just try again.
All right. Well, Michelle can try. All right. I don't know.
Thanks for your time.
Wait, I'm not done. The other thing that jumped out at me about his article was, and I don't know if this came up in the Unheard interview, but where we got the whole bat pangolin story from. Did he address that in the Unheard interview?
What?
The bat pangolin story, that narrative, where it came from.
Well, that's why I want you to interview him, because I don't understand these. I'm a 61-year-old retired doctor, but radiation oncology, not, my experience with infectious disease is limited to thrush infections from Decadron. But what he said was that normally when you have, like with SARS and MERS, it just doesn't jump to humans. There's certain tracks that it leaves, certain evidence, pieces of evidence. And he said that these pieces of evidence are missing with COVID-19.
Right.
That we don't have these pieces of evidence.
Right.
And to me, the thing is just obvious. Right. You've got the largest virus lab in the world.
Right.
And no, it's not from us. It's from the farmer's market across the street.
Yeah. And by the way, the lab who is, let's add up the data. The lab who is known to be doing research on coronaviruses, who has been funded to do gain of function, who had some sick people fall out of the lab early in the course of all this.
He also spoke about the levels of security. And I believe that there's 5 levels of security. And he said that for the kind of work they were doing, they should have been using level 4, and that they were often using level 2 or 3.
Interesting. That's interesting by itself. I'm going to reread the article.
Does that mean what?
It means
security for what?
Security in terms of infection control.
Letting people out of the country?
No.
No, in the lab, you have to wear double gowns, double gloves, take a shower before, take a shower after, wash your feet in alcohol, all this business. That's for like a certain level, and they were using ivory soap to wash their hands and putting on a mask.
Right. And they got sick. That's the other thing. But I'm gonna read the specifics in the article again. But the thing that caught my attention was where we got the bat story from was apparently one guy, and he pushed the story without any evidence for it. He just demanded we all adopt that story. And
the other thing he spoke about a lot was Peter Dodzik.
Yep.
Dodzik.
Yep.
He's the head of Eco Health Alliance.
Yep.
So this Peter Dodzik guy, head of Eco Health Alliance, gets money from the NIH.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Eco Health Alliance sends money to Wuhan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like a government money laundering scheme. And so then the first article that comes out to investigate, the first group that comes to investigate, where did this thing come from? Who heads this group?
And
Peter Dodzik.
Right, exactly.
He's the head of the group. He said so that he said in Nicholas Wade's way of doing journalism, he said that basically it's you ignore anything that's written. It's just a non-event. His investigation. He has too much of a bias to be counted, to be have a correct perspective.
Right. There's no way he could be objective.
Yeah. So you have to discount anything that was said. It's to ignore it.
And he's the one that pushed the bat theory, developed it. He sort of invented it.
If you don't think you've gotten enough requests that have been denied, here's another idea. Ask Peter Dodzik if he wants to come on.
That'd be interesting. Susan, I'm going to write that. That's a really interesting idea.
Wait, what did he say?
Peter Dodzik, see if he would want to come on.
Eco Health Alliance. I can tell you what the answer is.
Yeah, I would think not. Let me ask you something.
By the way, Drew.
Yeah.
By the way, Dodzik now, if I'm not mistaken, is part of Biden's coronavirus task force. And I could be wrong. Please look this up because I'm right now not home. But if I'm not mistaken, that's the reason why Peter Dodzik's name has suddenly come up.
It's very interesting. Well, I don't know that he should not be a part of that, but I do know that they should be very careful with his opinions. That's certainly true. I mean, he may know things that other people don't know, so that's interesting. Charles, why did you stop practicing medicine?
I was doing locums, and then COVID hit, and it was just a mess.
Yeah.
What happened was nobody was taking vacations.
Yeah.
All the meetings were canceled, and the calls, basically, they just stopped.
Yeah.
And I bought a house in Florida. I came down here, and I'm not leaving.
Were you in New York?
Chicago.
Were you surprised by the behavior of our peers during all this outbreak?
Again, I'm not radiation oncology. I'm not very little experience in virus or whatever.
Well, no, but I mean, you certainly interact with primary care people, right? I mean, that stuff's being referred to you often through oncologists and things too. But I'm just shocked that, you talk to people who are practicing, you ask them about Fluvoxamine or Ivermectin, and they don't know about it. They've never heard of it. They just like, where is this from? I could understand that. No, I don't like ivermectin. I don't think it's effective. I don't think the data is, but the answers I've been getting are just, I never heard of it. Are people not reading literature? I'm just so confused.
Hector Carvalho has done a tremendous amount of research on ivermectin.
Yeah, you've said. By the way,
number of patients, but it's all been done basically it hasn't been done professionally. There's
Yeah.
no drug company that's funding him.
Right.
He's been like paying for blood tests on his own.
Right.
And like follow up. And so the what he publishes, what he tries to get published, the people, the JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, whatever, he can't get anything published.
Yeah.
It's all in preprint.
Yeah.
Preprint.
I took ivermectin when I was sick. Susan took it as a prophylactic agent. It'll upset your GI system. It
didn't seem to work for you, but
well, who knows, right?
As bad as the data is, you got to consider the data from Bangladesh, the data from Argentina, the data from Peru, the data from Broward County. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, listen, I took it because I was reading that stuff. And by the way, we don't know that didn't curtail some of my acute phase of the illness. Might have.
It might have helped you a little bit. You didn't, it wasn't like the getting the antibodies. I know when you got the antibodies.
Yeah, that was marked. That was marked.
Well, I remember clearly when you took the ivermectin.
Oh, that's right. I said I was better, didn't I?
You said, I feel better when I take this.
Yeah, it's true. I did feel a little relief when I would take it. Yeah, I'd forgotten that. I would also get a little GI upset like during the night.
Oh, it was horrible on the stomach.
Messed her stomach up. She took it prophylactically.
I don't understand, with all this data out there on the ivermectin, is why, some substantial group, some university, some country, some state doesn't say, well, this looks good, let's follow up on it. The NIH,
it's coming. Well, I don't know about government agencies, but it's coming. I just was quoting an article that I was saying showed up through, let's see, this is, who published this? It's called The Pitfalls and Promises of Using Repurposed Drugs for COVID-19. It seems to be a review article on Medscape Medical News.
You have to say pitfalls.
What did I say?
No, they have to say pitfalls to get people to read it.
Well, who knows? But hey, I want to discuss, Charles, with you a personal issue. I am starting SBRT late in July for prostate cancer salvage, or XRT. How do you feel about the SBRT? Am I using the term right?
State of the art.
Yeah, I'm looking for. It's five treatments. That's it.
Yeah, it's I didn't do it. It's there's certain areas where they do it. They have certain machineries. They have that one kind of fancy machine. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, it's a big localizing machine. You have to get a big plastic thing built so you can hold perfectly still and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it takes like a week before you start treatment.
That's right.
You get
So
all
we're
lined up and everything like that.
And my PSA is 0.12. You know what I mean? It's way down there. So I got time.
Yeah.
But
So,
tell Susan that I will not be knocked out by this. See, everyone's concerned I'm going to be super fatigued, or I keep hearing there's very little side effect from it. Is that accurate?
Well, it's extremely accurate.
Yeah.
Nowadays. I mean, they've got it down to basically like millimeters, and they use like all sorts of immobilization devices.
Right.
I don't know like what all types of immobilization devices they're going to use for you, but they have a lot of them and they use a lot of them. And I don't know where you're going.
UCLA.
Well, that's that's the best.
Yeah.
So
how is he gonna feel?
That's what she keeps asking me.
He's
You're
like,
gonna feel bad.
Still
You're gonna
work. He said I can go back to work afterwards.
Yeah,
there's
there might be some like
irritation,
burning when you pee. But you should be fine. You'll be fine.
Exactly. See, listen, Susan.
You're gonna burn out radiation.
No, it's really.
you're gonna pee out radiation.
No, it's just irritating. It's irritating, right?
I'm not a doctor. I'm terrible when it comes to.
It's basically like a sunburn on your inside.
Exactly. Everyone's so worried. I'm such a workaholic. They're all convinced I'm lying to them about.
Can he take like some some like painkillers or something if he doesn't feel good?
To talk to your doctors, but
I know he won't. But
yeah, so I'm not particularly worried about it, and extremely effective.
Yeah,
so.
But you weren't particularly worried about having the thing where they poked into your prostate.
The biopsies?
Yes, that was nasty. That hurt.
Yeah, but I go about my business afterwards too. I mean,
kind of.
That was different. That what I would get was a kind of a chronic fatigue, And when they took my prostate out, there was chronic prostatitis from I had like 4 biopsies. You know, every 6 months I was getting biopsied as part of active surveillance.
It's a lot of work.
So yeah, it was good times. But my stamina stuff got better when the prostate was out because it was so inflamed from all the needles being put in it. Relax, Susan. It's all good. The only option is not aging, which is a worse option, because the only way you don't age is you don't want to think about that.
I'm not dying.
Right,
I was telling
Charles,
Dr.
back me
Park
up on
about
this.
you today and how you got like COVID long haulers and you were like sick and and that you got it at the hospital. She's like, oh, poor Drew. And then my son got it. He was out of it in 3 days. I was fine.
Yeah. All right, Charles. Anything else?
Well, you know, I hate to beat a dead horse into the ground on the COVID, but honest to God, we got 3.5 million people dead worldwide. We got, I would say, at least 100 million people lost their jobs worldwide.
Yeah. Or their businesses, which is even worse, right?
And so I would say that this is by far the biggest thing in our lifetimes.
I completely agree. I don't even think we fully appreciate. We're going to look back on this. In the rearview mirror, this is not going to look good. That's my prediction. I mean, there will be things we did right, but they're going to be.
You'll look good.
We'll see. We'll see. I may look better in the retrospect, but the thing that
you will look good.
Well, thank you.
The people who are not going to look good is the people who censored Steve Kirsch's emails.
Yep.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. If you had, let's put it this way, had you asked me 2 years ago, could I imagine that? I'd be, no, how could that possibly happen? Now, yeah, I can imagine that.
They censored his emails.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, this is nuts. This is nuts.
It's beyond, yeah. That is what and you know what else I have playing in my head? I don't know if you have medical people in your family. Anybody physicians before you?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Didn't know.
My dad and my uncle were physicians, and I just have them in my head going, wait a minute, you shut the world down for a respiratory virus? Like what? We had polio and yellow fever and Tsutsugamushi disease, and you shut the world, and tuberculosis, and you shut. They'd be confused. They'd be like, huh?
No, they did that with little or no evidence.
Right.
I mean, good intentions, but little or no evidence.
Yeah.
Then they turn around and they censor Steve Kirsch's emails.
Yeah.
His emails?
They censored his emails.
Wait, who did? I missed it. Sorry, I was.
Oh yeah, they did.
The email company.
Oh yeah.
The email company went into Steve Kirsch's emails and they didn't like what he was saying, and they blocked him. It came out gibberish.
Yeah, so I think, I suspect there's going to be some case law to try to straighten these things out, because I don't think this should ever happen again. Humbly, I think.
Well, if Mark Garagos wants to sue Peter Dodzik, I'll send him a check.
Okay, I will tell him. Susan will tell him.
By the way, I want to, Drew, can I send the correction about Dosik?
Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
What's his name?
Of the World Health Organization.
He's with World Health?
Yeah, he's part of the World Health Organization.
Not Echo Health.
According to what I was reading just now. And he there are numerous reports that he donated plenty of times to Biden's campaign in the 2020 election. That is where the Biden connection comes in, is his donations to the Biden campaign. Now, again, that doesn't mean he's ever met Biden. We have no idea. However, Peter Dosik is a very interesting person in here. The other person I want to add is Ralph Barrick. For those that are curious on who Ralph Barrick is, Ralph Barrick runs the lab over at UNC Chapel Hill. And if you do a basic search about coronavirus research, and this is what Rand Paul was talking about with Fauci. Rand Paul was talking about with Fauci about gain-of-function research and Barrick and that lab.
No, I know. There's again, I think we all should go listen to that unheard interview that Charles mentioned. And
Yes, I agree.
and I guess I'm somebody on the. I guess there's some new data coming out on vaccine side effects. 4,400 deaths, 21,000 serious injuries. So, I hope people interpret that data very carefully, not with the panic porn, just very carefully, and then think about the fact that there might be some cohort medication like Fluvoxamine or those sorts of things that might have some utility in reducing some of those risks.
Steve
Again,
Kirsch is here.
Steve is here.
We were talking about you.
There you are. Hey, Steve. Yeah, we're just talking about the VAERS data.
Yeah, my ears were burning.
Yeah, and so I wasn't super clear about the conversation we had, except that I needed to talk to you and I was worried about everything. Do you want to update people about where things are? One of the conversations we've been having is why can't people use fluvoxamine and ivermectin as some sort of cohort or some sort of adjunct to potentially reduce the risk of vaccine side effects?
Yes, they probably could, because the side effects are due to, we think, there's certainly an argument to be made for the side effects are due to the inflammatory storm when your body is reacting to the spike protein. But I would argue actually the reverse, that if you haven't been vaccinated yet, you shouldn't get vaccinated. And I've just recently come to, I was totally convinced that people should be vaccinated, and I went on the fence. Now I'm the other way. I'm just on a Zoom call that I just left, and I asked the other guy that I'm in the Zoom call with, hey, do you know any friends who've had bad effects from the vaccine? And he said, yeah, there's like this, a friend of mine, he can't walk. He's paralyzed. And he's been paralyzed for 2 weeks, and now it's getting better, but he's going to go through 6 months of physical therapy, and it happened because of the vaccine. And earlier I got a call about 14 teenagers are having cardiac problems after getting the vaccine. So I've moved my position from, neutral to now, you shouldn't get this vaccine.
How about we qualify it as, if you have zero risk for serious complication, that's where you shouldn't be taking it, in your opinion?
Well, I would argue even then, because look, I'm 65. I have multiple risk factors. If I knew what I know now, I would absolutely rather get the virus and treat it with fluvoxamine early and ivermectin and so forth.
But you took the vaccine.
Yeah, because at the time I thought it was safe, because I was believing what people were saying.
I want to try to, again, this is this part that I'm always trying to coach you up on, which is making a risk reward analysis. For you, it was safe. Yeah. It was safe and worth it.
Oh yeah, because look, I'm just saying, from the data that I know, I have heard too many bad stories.
It scared you.
About weird things that are happening. I'm talking to doctors who say, look, the number of weird stuff that happens after this vaccine is off the charts, and these are very highly respected doctors.
Yes, and I don't doubt that it's true. The case I was making to you today is that because I believe these vaccines cause a mini COVID, you might have been in much worse shape if you got the full spike load. You know what I mean?
No, I don't believe that, Drew. And the reason for that is just the pharmacokinetics of how the vaccine works versus
how the virus
itself.
Yeah.
Okay. And I talked to an expert after I realized this, and I said, look, here's what I think. Is this right? He says, I never really thought of it that way, but that's a really good way to think about it. So think about the natural infection as getting in through your nose, and then it spreads from your nose, and it spreads maybe to your lungs, but it spreads naturally, and it spreads really slowly, because you only get, I don't know, millions of viruses. You're not like exposed like you would be in a shot, right? You're getting it. No, well, hang on.
I'm listening.
Okay, so look, it's like starting you're starting a fire.
Yeah, I get you.
And like you're an amateur arsonist. If you're an amateur arsonist, you put the flame in one place, and you let the fire go and burn from there, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's only at one place. With the vaccine, it's completely different. We're like this professional arsonist who is setting these fires, meaning implanting the spike proteins all over your body. It's not just in your shoulder like normal vaccines. In this vaccine, it's different. It basically causes your body to produce spike protein all over your body, in your ovaries, in your brain, in your heart.
It has a different, right. I will.
It's a different way of setting a fire. And
yes, but here's the one thing that I would sort of, again, I'm not, your thinking is sound. I just sort of thinking of things that occur to me as you talk about it. That's presuming that the inflammatory component of this illness is something very systemic, right? Or maybe even on a cellular level. My concern is, or my sense is, that the major issue, particularly in brain with this disease, is blood vessel. And the blood vessel is something to do with a consumptive coagulopathy, something to do with the antibodies that are produced from the spike protein. It's some epiphenomenon that is not the typical inflammatory phenomenon that if it were occurring in my ovary and my kidney, I'd be worried about. Does that make sense? It's a little different. It's microangiopathy as opposed to a diffuse inflammatory reaction, which, by the way, it might be both. It might still be both.
I think it's both.
Yeah, it might be both.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
But the issue here is that if we look at what happens with people who get COVID and are treated early, and we look at the results, and we look across tens of thousands or 100,000 patients, you never hear any of the stories, any of the horror stories that you hear from this vaccine. Now, this vaccine has been given to 100 million people that have gotten, over 90 million people have gotten 2 doses of the vaccine. So, there are a lot more cases. So when you hear about these anecdotes, right, you have to weigh them.
Right.
But the thing is that nobody's close. In all of these cases that have happened so far, all these people who have been treated, that we don't have anybody close to some of these horror stories. You talk to George Fareed, who's treated 6,500 patients, and there were no horror stories, right? Because
of the COVID illness.
Yeah.
Well, but you're raising an important point. Let's put a finer point on it, which is that therapeutics for the acute illness have become much better, and so the fear of the illness should not be so great as it has been. Right.
And they suppress that too.
Yeah.
Because by suppressing it, they make the vaccine look like your only option.
Right.
And if it's your only option, you say, fine, it's my only option, no brainer. But once it's no longer your only option, once you understand that it's actually giving you mini COVID and it's punching it into your arm, like no way close to what you would get it if you were getting it naturally. You're looking at a very intense situation here. It's almost like this forest fire, right? You're getting people who have heart attacks within 2 minutes after getting. My carpet cleaner had a heart attack 2 minutes after he got the vaccine, and he almost died. Okay, so that is nowhere close to comparable. I get excited.
That's a different thing. Mayor, if it's related. If it's related.
There's, if he had gotten a heart attack 2 minutes before, no problem.
Right.
But he got the heart attack 2 minutes after, and he's 38 years old in perfect health.
That's crazy. Well, I don't want to. That should be Steve Strikes Back. That's pretty wild, Steve. I got to tell you that's.
No, I mean, look, I don't have that many people that service my house during COVID. He's maybe like one of a dozen people. So to have one of a dozen people, and not only him had a side effect from this virus that is debilitating,
the vaccine,
but his wife has a debilitating reaction to the same vaccine. It was a Pfizer vaccine. She got it at a different time in a different place, so it wasn't the same batch. And she now shakes her, so she holds up a cup and her hand shakes like she has Parkinson's. You never, ever see anything close to this happening if you just get the virus and you treat it early. So today I've changed my personal view on this, I invite people to check out the facts. And, you know, there's no transparency here. That's the other thing.
Right.
That people are supposed to report to vSafe. You cannot search the vSafe database. It is hidden from view. So you have to rely on theirs, which is the not official database. And there are 4,000 deaths, none of which have been investigated and explained to the public. So we have 4,200 deaths. And I asked, well, how come this is not in the public view? And I mean, the drug companies are supposed to investigate. Yeah, that's right. They're supposed to investigate all of them, but they're not required to make any of that data public.
Right, right.
So we don't even know what the stats are, because the vSafe database, which has 50 million people who are reporting in vSafe, we don't know what's in that database because it's hidden from us. So, you know, I have a lot of concerns about the transparency here, because look, if the virus is as safe as they tell you it is, then they have nothing to hide.
Right.
And they should be releasing all the 4,200 analyses of the people who have died coincidentally with this virus and show, look, it wasn't related. He just died of old age, or he was hit by a truck, or he was, you know, but the fact is that the rate that this is happening is like 120 times higher than the rate for the influenza vaccine. If you look for the influenza for the last 30 years, there are even fewer deaths in the last 30 years in influenza than there are for the 5 months in COVID. So there's something going on here. This vaccine is not as safe as previous vaccines. It doesn't work the same way as previous vaccines. And so, you know, you should really look at the data for people who have been treated early, who have gotten COVID and treated early, and look at the outcomes there, and look at the outcomes for people who've been given the vaccine. And you know, you have to weigh the
right
that for yourself.
It's not a zero risk proposition on either side.
Neither one is a zero risk proposition. Absolutely. So you have to look at your individual circumstances, and you know, everybody's got their own rubric on how much they weigh. You know, a lot of this is anecdotal evidence. We haven't seen.
How about knowing the risk?
A lot of it is transparency. We haven't just seen the data from the 4,200.
That's what Steve is saying, Susan. That if we had the data, you could really make the analysis more clearly.
It's troubling, because if the virus, if the vaccine is as safe as they say it is, then they would have everything to gain by making it transparent.
What I was bugging Steve about today was, you know, he's not from the medical system and has been banging away at the medical system throughout this pandemic. And I was asking him, what have you learned? What have you learned? What do you think now? What is the problem with my profession and this system? And, you know, it's hard
I'll tell you, if I was in the medical profession, my lips would be sealed. I don't want to lose any of those NIH grants, and I don't want to have my drug not get FDA approved. So my lips would be sealed if I was an insider. If I was a medical professional, I wouldn't be saying anything. And that's in fact what my friends are saying is like, look, I can't, you know, I agree with you, but I can't stick my neck out because of fear of retribution.
Charles, do you have any questions for Steve now that we're getting into this part of the conversation?
No, I mentioned before you got on that I was very upset that your emails had been censored.
Crazy, right?
I didn't understand how they could shut down society, close schools with little or no evidence, and then they turn around and they censor your emails. All you want to do is discuss a few things.
Crazy, right?
I don't understand. It's very upsetting to me.
I got a text.
Steve, can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yes, I brought this up earlier with Dr. Drew, and I want to bring this up with Steve. That you talking about fluvoxamine has become very powerful, because you are helping, even though it might be one by one, you are helping patients get better and preventing many of them from becoming long haulers to begin with. I brought up a case where I was watching the video, a prior episode of A Dose of Dr. Drew that you were on, Steve. And one of the comments, this is from earlier this week, The person saw the video, gave her family member, was able to get fluvoxamine for her family member, and within 24 hours, that person was feeling better from COVID. And, you know, I just want to say thank you for working with different groups to try to find early COVID outpatient treatments that have been working. And fluvoxamine is certainly one of them that has been working. And I highly recommend whoever did not see what I said earlier, you've got to see the 60 Minutes piece, which I will post on Locals, the 60 Minutes piece with Steve Kirsch in there.
Okay.
Excellent.
So wait, can I say something? So you remember Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
He texts me every day. So the latest article with him in it, it says Dr. Zelenko calls child vaccine mandate coercive human experimentation crimes against humanity. And then he texts me also, these are criminals of the highest order, must be brought to justice for crimes against humanity. He's very anti-vax, okay, because he knows that hydroxychloroquine has worked for him and his patients. But I mean, he's way over the top sometimes with his stuff. But I think he would agree that, you know, kids don't need it because they basically they can get over it. They have a 99% rate of recovery from COVID without any treatment.
Which is interesting. Steve, you haven't mentioned children. Steve?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
So, look, my experience is that anybody who gets COVID should be treated early, even kids, because I know I talked to a doctor and she said, "Oh, you're 17 years old. You're 17 years old. You know, you're going to have a mild time with the virus." That person ended up with a debilitating neurological condition, clearly as a result. It was Tourette's
Interesting.
syndrome.
Really interesting.
My son had a big reaction.
And she said it was directly related to the reaction from the virus. So look, I think that there is the drug is harmless. You know, fluvoxamine. The number of deaths from fluvoxamine over the past 37 years is like 2. And that was if you have extreme overdose. But when it's as you know, the dosages here is 1/3 of the FDA approved dose. So it's a small dose over 14 days. Nobody dies from this, not even close.
And let me just, again, I'm always pushing back on all this just to try to weigh everything. But by the way, she regrets. She says, "I regret the decision that I didn't treat her, and I will not make that mistake again." Right. And I have seen some unpleasant reactions from fluvoxamine, but I've not seen any significant or serious reactions to it. So
right, and it's temporary.
Yeah.
It's
while you're taking it. Right. All right, Susan, I have something I have to do in a few minutes here, so I'm going to have to wrap this up.
Glad you popped in,
yeah,
Steve.
Thank you for coming by. I really appreciate it.
Steve's a Locals fan. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we have...
Or did somebody just send you an email, like, randomly?
You know, I haven't even, I've heard about Locals and then I should be on it, but I haven't, to be honest, I don't know, is it an app or, I've heard the name, but I don't know.
Did I send you the Zoom meeting? How'd you get the Zoom meeting?
Oh, Joe sent it.
Oh, Joe. Good job, Joe. Thank you.
Through me.
Excellent.
Hello, Joe.
All right, Steve, maybe Susan, you can get him in contact with one of the guys from Locals and get this going, because I'm sure they'd be happy to have him.
It's $7 a month, Steve.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, if he wants to start his own Locals thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, all right, Steve, thank you again. I didn't know we'd be talking so much today, but it's good to see your face and hear your voice and keep fighting the good fight.
My pleasure.
For the rest of you on Zoom, it's been a really interesting little afternoon event. I appreciate your guys' input as always, and we love having you here. Hi, guys. Wave at everybody as we say goodbye. Any last minute anything from anybody? Everybody's good?
Can I ask you
I
one
hope
question?
you both have a great holiday weekend.
Thank you, Joe. Diane has one last question. Diane, go ahead.
One question. Okay, so I have a niece that's 25 that has been trying to get the vaccine because she wants to go to New York to see some friends.
Yeah.
But she has a real big issue. She passes out all the time.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law has tried 3 different times to take her in, and each time right before she gets in, she passes out. So my question is,
she's like the goats.
Oh,
Fainting
The
goats.
goats, the
that's her
fainting goats.
sister. Yeah, she completely. Like he took her to the Costco pharmacy, and she walked around the corner and she
Right.
passed out before
Right.
she even got to pharmacy. So my question is, and I don't know if this is ethical as a nurse, but I'm thinking can I like get her to sign it, just the forms, and then if she passes out, like if I have a wheelchair there, just wheel her in.
How about if you just sneak up on her?
The
in her
answer
sleep?
is yes. If you get her consent for that,
Consent
or
for the form, right?
or you could
If she
ask
passes out.
the pharmacist, maybe work with the pharmacist in such a way that you could actually administer the vaccine. Right
While she's
when she
sleeping.
passes out, you just
Right
give
when
it.
she passes out. So I
If
can't do
that's
it
what
if
you
she's
wanna
passed
do.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that when I'm down
Yeah.
here, is that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get.
How
Okay,
old is
just wanna
she?
make sure.
25.
Yeah, 25.
All right, you guys.
But her older sisters, they're all like this. They pass
Maybe
out. I can't
we'll
even
not.
talk about nursing when I'm there, or everybody
is
just
the,
has a big fit.
Fainting goat family.
Yeah.
Guys, I do have to go. So thank you all for being here. And we will see you across the weekend at all, Susan, or Memorial Day or anything?
No, we have 3 days off.
All right. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.
But tell a friend.
Thanks. I've struggled with various digestive issues over the years, so gut health is extremely important to me. Now, while gut health awareness has increased, it has led to a wellness trend that inspired a host of kind of questionable marketing claims and even false claims. You've seen the word probiotic attached to all kinds of supplements, drinks, and more, and they may claim to deliver the healthy microorganisms our guts need for proper function, but all too often the promises are really too good to be true. Thankfully, I became aware of a company called Seed and their flagship product, the Daily Synbiotic. That's right. Seed's Daily Synbiotic offers 24 clinically researched strains of microorganisms in a single dose. These strains support gut, skin, and heart health and promotes regularity, sometimes within as little as 24 to 48 hours. To me, what really sets Seed's Daily Synbiotic apart is its delivery system. This is my supply. While some products may offer the right strains, they are fragile and they rarely survive the trip through your gut. Seed uses a capsule-in-capsule design that helps ensure that 100% of the probiotics reach your colon where they matter most. Now, I've been taking Seed's Daily Synbiotic, and I encourage you to check out their story and the science behind what they do. To try it for yourself, just go to seed.com/Dr. Drew. Use code Dr. Drew for 20% off your first month of Daily Synbiotic. That is seed.com/Dr. Drew. Use code DRDREW, Dr. Drew. I am so grateful for our friends at Blue Microphones. Not only have they completely changed what our show sounds like, they've given me headphones so I can monitor things better. This is the mic for millions of creative people, and now I know why. I'm so grateful for them completely changing the quality of our audio. You'll find Blue mics like Yeti and the Mouse, which we're using here, both in pro studios and home studios, literally all over the world. Their popular Yeti caster is a Blue Yeti microphone, plus a boom arm system that's behind many of your favorite podcasts. I run into them all the time, and now I know why. If you've ever thought about creating your own podcast or YouTube channel, Blue can make you sound and look great. Just visit bluemic.com and click Get Started, and you can start telling your story.
Now, a team of 6 investigators are on a double mission.
We're going to go deeper and farther than almost anyone has ever gone.
To find out if Akakur and Akahim are real.
There's no way that this is a natural structure.
And to discover what happened to the missing and murdered explorers.
There was a big hole in the back of his head.